Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Visual Knights of the Round podcast. I am your lovely hostess, the Lady Ravah.
And I am your host, Arthur. I'm excited about this. We're going into a new dimension.
I'm kind of nervous. I'm not going to lie.
Hi, Mom.
So, Arthur, did you know that, are you hyped about this episode?
Oh, the hype is through the roof right now.
Okay, I'm done.
In
with
case
this.
you
Can we
didn't
move
know,
on?
guys, we're going to be talking about hype this episode.
So, to give you a little sampling of what you get on the full podcast, I actually kind of wanted to talk about how hype, we're going to talk about a little bit about what hype can do for a franchise in a good or a bad way, but I kind of want to talk about how hype can actually affect the technical production of a piece. Specifically, the examples I think we want to look at that we talked about were video games, how because a game was overhyped, it actually affected the technical nature of the video game itself.
And it's not just exclusive to video games, but we can often see it more presently in video games, such as Final Fantasy 15 or LA Noire, which were so hyped around their release that it actually caused some extremely unfortunate circumstances for the people producing those games.
Now, I'm not like a huge gamer. You know, I grew up with a Sega Genesis with a bunch of Disney games because I was poor and that was all we could afford. But I understand there was a really big gap between console games for the Final Fantasy series. You had the big gap between 13 and 15, and 14's in between, but 14 is an MMO. And while I love 14, Warrior Class for life, but, you know, I can understand how you want another Final Fantasy game. So there was a lot of hype around it, and that put a lot of pressure on Square Enix to release this game. And I think that it pushed them to release it almost before it was ready to be released.
And honestly, like, a lot of that pressure came from the fans. The fans themselves were clamoring, insisting on getting it.
Because they
really
were hyped for it.
The Final Fantasy 15 that they wanted, they were told was going to be Final Fantasy 13 until Square Enix pushed it and then substituted the whole Lightning story. But when we got the trailer of Noctis, it was originally going to be for Final Fantasy 13. And so fans have been waiting for, 5 years, and they're like, screw it, guys, just give us the product already. And Square Enix went, okay, here's what we got. And what we got was missing 10 hours of gameplay from the final product.
Well, I don't even know that. So Final Fantasy 15 is one of my first games on PS4 that I played. And you didn't actually finish it, but you know enough about the game.
I followed it very closely.
And the first few chapters are really good. You get the open worldness that they promised. The world is huge. It literally takes you 2 to 5 real life minutes to drive the Final Fantasy bros from one place to another.
Just from one gas station to the next station. It is massive. You feel like you're on this big odyssey. Really is what I liken it into. Is very very Homer-esque in that you feel like you're on some sort of odyssey in a convertible Camaro, but it can
fly later, by the way.
Oh no, I know, and I'm very insanely jealous that I never got to that point in the game. But it's they promised a big game, and they opened us up with a big game. You can very much tell that like that first 10 or so hours of the game was what they had promised, and it lived up to those expectations.
But then you get to about, I don't remember what chapter it was specifically, but your objective in the main story quest is to walk up and down the train. And there's nothing really for you to do. You can kind of sort of interact with the NPCs, but there's not really anything to do other than walk up and down the train until the game decides you're done. And it's like, what happened? How did it go from this big, huge open world to I'm walking up and down a train and I'm going in a linear story? Which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the big gripes that a lot of people had about 13.
It's one of the reasons why 13 is my least favorite game. It's not a Final Fantasy game to me. It's an adventure game, and it is Final Hallway 13, to reference one of JonTron's videos. You have a narrow linear path that you follow from point A to point B to point C, and that's the story. But if you play Final Fantasy 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or literally any other main game, there's this huge overworld that you can explore, and you can kind of go at it from any direction. And Square Enix had heard the complaints for about 13 and decided, hey guys, we're gonna make this better. We're gonna give you what you want. But then they realized, oh wait, we dumped so much of our resources into making sure 14 didn't implode on itself that we're not actually ready for this. But at that point, the fans had decided, hey, we have to get this game right now. No more excuses. And well, that caused that technical issue with the game.
So how do you think hype influenced that? Would you say it's because we live in a society?
It's entirely because they said, hey, we're going to want our money back if we don't get this game right now. However, looking at their time, if y'all want the rest of this conversation, you can come on over and listen to our full podcast where we break down this and a lot more.
Check us out on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor at Knights of the Round.
See you there.